Hi, I'm Jeff Lucklin. I'm with the Nurture Nature Center, and this is Science at Home. In this video, we're going to go to new heights as we explore the science of kites, like that one right over there. A kite is a type of aircraft. Usually it's a heavier than air aircraft. An example of a lighter than air aircraft would be a hot air balloon or a helium or hydrogen gas balloon. Lighter than air aircraft use buoyancy to stay off the ground. And to learn more about that, check out this video. Heavier than air aircraft use lift to stay off the ground. An airplane or a helicopter uses an aerofoil to generate lift and fly. See this video for more information about flight. A kite is more like this second class of aircraft. It uses air flowing over the kite to create lift and drag forces that keep it up in the air. Notice that unlike the balloon, which relies on buoyancy, or an aircraft which uses an engine to make it move forward and generate lift, a kite is reliant on the weather. You can't fly a kite on a calm day. That's not a problem today. It's quite windy today. You can operate a kite if the wind isn't blowing, but you have to run in order to do it. And where's the fun in that? Kites are likely the oldest way that humans discovered to make a device that could take to the air. There are 9,000-year-old cave paintings in Indonesia that depict what appears to be a kite on a line that resembles a modern diamond kite. People in that part of the world still make kites from local plant fibers. What an amazing tradition to keep alive all these millennia. The ancient Chinese developed very sophisticated kites. Around the time of the Middle Ages, Chinese kites were made of very strong, lightweight materials like silk and bamboo rods. They were used to send messages, to test the winds, and even to lift people off the ground. They were used for fun and for recreation, and some were very beautiful and ornate. Although not an accurate example of a Chinese design, I think this dragon kite captures the spirit of artistic expression seen in many of these ancient Chinese and Japanese kites. Sailors brought kites from Asia to Europe in the 1600s. At first, Europeans considered them to be curiosities, but by the 1700s, some people were actually using them as vehicles for scientific research. Large kites could carry small animals or thermometers up to very great heights, for example. Now, perhaps the most famous experiment involving a kite was described by Benjamin Franklin in a paper that he published in 1752. Franklin wanted to prove that lightning was a larger example of the electricity that people of his day were experimenting with in the form of static electricity. He described an experiment that involved flying a kite in a thunderstorm. Now, I have set up a model of his experiment because I'm not willing to do the real thing. So in my version of the experiment, I've got a Van de Graaff generator. That's this dome over here, which is going to generate very large electrostatic forces. And connected to the generator is a paper kite with a nice yellow kite tail. And then I've got a string, which I've made wet. A dry piece of string will not conduct electricity very well, but this wet string should conduct it pretty well. The electric charge should travel down the string over to an electroscope, and I'm going to turn it on now. So if this is working, the electricity will travel down the string, and the pieces of foil on the electroscope, they are moving apart. Well, we have sent electric charge, a static electric charge down this string, and it would work the same way in a thunderstorm. It just wouldn't be very safe. Franklin said that you could use this setup to charge a Leyden jar, which is a kind of electrostatic battery that he would have been familiar with. And I have a Leyden jar here now, and I have the generator on again, and if this is working, then I should be able to make a spark jump from my Leyden jar. Let's try it. Definitely worked. So Franklin was able to show, using a kite, that electrical charge could be conducted down a wet string to the ground, that you could use that charge the same way that you could use an electrical charge, electrostatic charge, built up using pieces of glass and fur, which was a common way that people had to generate electrostatic forces back in his day, using this method that he described. Another scientist named George William Richman attempting to perform a similar experiment in 1753, died in the process by being struck by lightning, which is why you should never attempt to do this experiment either. You should never fly a kite in a real thunderstorm. Kites today are made of even stronger, more reliable materials, and they come in a variety of shapes and fun patterns. Some common shapes that you're likely to see are the diamond. This is a classic shape. Notice it has tails. Another very common shape is the delta pattern. This is a delta kite, and it's got a keel, this plastic here, that helps keep it flying straight. Parafoil and inflatable kites are the most modern innovation. The biggest kites in the world are these kinds of inflatable kites. At the opposite end of the spectrum, I have here a microkite. The majority of the kites that you're likely to see will have a few common features. A kite needs some body of some kind that acts as the lifting wing. For this particular kite, it's this piece of plastic here, which is shaped like an aeroplane. The body needs to be made of some sort of light, flexible material like fabric or plastic or even paper. To maintain its shape, rigid spines are often used. That one has spines. The diamond kite has these spines here, and the delta kite has this plastic spine and this wooden spine here. To keep the kite stable and facing into the wind, a kite needs some kind of a tail, typically. Again, this kite has these long red plastic ribbons for the tail, but the delta kite is unusual in that it doesn't have a tail, it has a keel, which serves the same purpose. Ribbons can often be used not only to keep the kite stable, but also they can be very showy. For example, the spinner tail on the dragon kite that I showed you earlier is a wonderful example. A kite also needs a cord of some kind that will connect it to the ground. This one has a thin string. For a very large kite, you might need something much sturdier, much stronger, and that will connect it to an anchor somewhere on the ground, holding it in place. Different kites have different advantages. Some are able to perform stunts, for example. Delta kites are able to perform some really interesting stunts. Now, I have a delta kite, and it's not able to do stunts because I only have one string on it. The ones that can do loops and other interesting acrobatic effects have more than one string on them, so the person controlling the kite can kind of shift its direction in the sky, but they're able to do wonderful things. Other kites are kind of the opposite of these delta kites, where they're incredibly stable in flight. There's a new kind of kite that's being used in aerial photography called a kitoon. This is a hybrid of a kite and a balloon. The combination is better than either of these objects is on its own. Perhaps one of the most useful kite designs for scientists is the box kite. Here's an example of a box kite. It's a very large kite, as you can see. The box kite was invented in 1893 by Lawrence Hargrave. The box kite is a high-performance kite in terms of stability and lifting force. A large box kite or a series of them on the same line can actually lift a human being off the ground with less material than many other designs. Box kites were useful to early experimenters trying to invent airplanes. The Wright brothers experimented with box kites, and it's no coincidence that their plane strongly resembles a box kite with an engine attached to it. For this week's at-home activity, I encourage you to make your own kite. I will include a link to several designs that you can try. I chose to go with the box kite. I made this box kite myself. The way I did it was I used paper for the sails and dowel rods for the main body of the kite, and everything is hot glued together. I glued 2 X's together, and then I glued together 4 lines along the edges of each of those X's, and then glued the paper in place around this frame. So as you can see from the footage on your screen, not only did the kite fly, but it flew really, really well. It took off like a shot, and it was flying 50, 75 feet overhead in just a few seconds. It was amazing how quickly it took off. I really enjoyed flying this kite, and I can see why meteorologists still use this kind of kite. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.